Here, anyway. They got these new kind of visits in here. Conjugals. It means you can come in and bring Elizabeth with you.
You mean private visits?
Yeah. They got this shed out in the grounds and it's got all this grass around it so Elizabeth can play on it.
How long's this been going on?
They had the first visit today. One of the women had her bloke in and her 2 kids. They're not married, but he's the father of the 2 kids, you know, just like us.
Yeah, well, they're hardly going to let me bring Elizabeth in, are they? I mean, they wouldn't even let me take her out of the home.
Oh, I can arrange all that. It's just a matter of signing the right papers, that's all.
Enjoy the visit, Latham?
Oh, yeah. Thanks ever so much for letting him back in, Miss Bennett.
It's the least I could do. You won't be seeing him again for a while.
What do you mean?
We checked your story about him being Elizabeth's father.
Well, he is.
Oh, yes, we know that now. I just received a telephone call from the department. They confirmed that he was at Barnhurst while you were there.
Well, so what? He's done his time. He's free now.
He's an ex-criminal, Latham. You know the rules. No consorting. I'm sure when I tell Mrs. Davidson the news, you won't be getting a visit from him or your child for as long as you're at Wentworth.
What's up, Chrissy?
Come on, love, you can tell us.
It's that bloody Vera.
Oh, what's she done now?
She's going to stop Mick from coming in and visiting me.
Why? Did he smuggle something in for you?
Oh, of course he didn't. He's got more sense than that. No. Vera's found out he's done time in Barnhurst, and he's been checking up on him and everything.
Well, they must have known that when you told them he was Elizabeth's father.
Well, how was I to know that? I didn't know that, did I?
Yeah, well, you reckoned you didn't care much for blokes anyway.
Yeah, well, Mick's different.
Vera's the only one who can bring Elizabeth in.
Yeah.
Eh?
And now Vera's really gone and buggered that up too.
God, she's a bitch. She wouldn't have left George and me alone, you know, if it wasn't for Fletch.
You bloody woman. Which was her leaving and not Mrs. Morris.
Who are you talking about, Smith?
Oh, no one you'd know, Vera. Just a rotten bitch who gets her kicks by spying on others.
And sticking her nose into people's private affairs.
I would have thought you'd learnt by now. There are no private affairs in here.
Well, as long as you've got anything to do with it anyway.
I do the job I'm paid for, Smith. Now get out of here, all of you.
Bloody screws, they're all the same. They don't care about us. They might as well be humping meat in an abattoir.
What's the matter with her?
Oh, Vera's been stirring Chrissy. She won't let her bloke come visiting anymore.
Bloody Vera, she ought to be kicked out of this joint. Yeah, and who are you going to get to replace her? Gillespie or Jock Stewart? Nah, Jock Stewart's in Pentridge.
Yeah, we know that, Lizzie, but what Bee's saying is that we could end up with somebody worse than Vera.
Wonder who they get to replace Mrs. M. She's not leaving, is she?
Yeah, she is. She's going to be a parole officer.
You mean we'll never see her again?
Oh, of course we will. She'll be hanging around this place just as much as she does now.
I wouldn't bet on it. When's the last time you saw a parole officer around here?
Won't be the same without her. Care for a game?
No, I've got something to do. I'll see you after tea.
She was one of the best ones we ever had, she was. Nobody's going to give a bugger about us now.
I'll give you a game if you like.
Yeah, well, I don't reckon it'll be for good. It'll be just like the last time she chucked it in, and we were the ones who talked her out of it.
Why is she leaving, do you know?
Old man probably cracked down on her because she's working too many night shifts.
Yeah, too much sleep and not enough bed.
Probably just doesn't like being married to a screw. Would you? There's got to be something wrong with somebody who wants to lock people up all the time.
God, you really got it in for him today.
Chrissy, aren't you supposed to be in the rec room with the others?
No, I just wanted to be on my own for a while, Mrs. Morris.
Are you upset about something?
It's my boyfriend, Mick.
Well, what about him? You've had 2 visits from him already.
I know. But Miss Bennett said I wasn't going to be allowed to see him anymore on account of he's been an ex-crim.
I see.
Well, I thought all the officers knew. I mean, I told Mr. Fletcher he was Elizabeth's father. I mean, I've been inside for years, and I...
Well, the inquiry never established who the father was.
I know. I didn't want to get us both into strife, did I? And I just thought when he came in on that visit, they must have known and they were just, turning a blind eye to it. I never thought I'd see him again, Mrs. Morris. I mean, I've had some blokes in my time, but, well, Mick, he was different, And when he just turned up out of the blue like that... Oh, look, if I don't get to see him again, Mrs. Morris, I know he's going to drift off because he wouldn't write to me.
Well, there's not really anything I can do,
I'm
Chrissy.
not asking for a conjugal or anything like that. Just to see him from time to time.
Well, I'll speak to Mrs. Davidson, but I can't promise anything.
Oh, thanks, Mrs. Morris.
There was enough light in here.
Of course there is. I'm just doing this to make sure Ken gets the letter without the screws having a look first.
Do you reckon the screws are still opening our letters?
I wouldn't put it past them.
Bloody nosy mongrels.
Yeah.
Hey, what you say to Ken?
But you're as bad as the screws.
All right, if you want to keep secrets from your best
I've
friend.
just asked him if he knows that he's allowed to visit again.
Do you reckon the screws would have told him?
Dunno. Can't take anything they say as gospel. That is why I'm writing, Lizzie. If he gets this, then we'll know that the screws are fair dinkum. But if he doesn't, then we'll know it's all a snow job just to turn us into good little girls. And if it is, then it's going to be on for young and old.
Well, she's pretty upset, and I really can't see what harm it would do. I mean, Mick O'Brien seems nice enough, and Lord knows Chrissy needs someone who's prepared to look after her.
Yes, indeed. I admire Vera's efficient use of the rule book, but I do wish she wouldn't use it as a Bible sometimes.
Do you think the department will reopen the inquiry into how Chrissy got pregnant?
I hope not. Her case is due to come before the parole board next week. I'll speak to Ted Douglas about it. I'm sure he'll let sleeping dogs lie.
And Mick O'Brien?
Well, if you really think he'd be a steadying influence on Chrissy, I'm prepared to let him visit, but not unsupervised.
Thanks. I'll tell Chrissy.
Tell me, Meg, what is the general feeling among the women about the conjugal visits?
A little suspicious, I think.
Well, I suppose that's to be expected. Anyway, there's a journalist coming tomorrow morning. I think it's about time we had some good publicity for a change, don't you? Good morning. I'm Erica Davidson, the governor.
Bevan Taylor from the Standard.
Please sit down.
Thank you. I believe you have some new developments in prison reform to tell us about.
Yes, we're rather excited about it, really. We're trying to create a less isolated atmosphere to ease prisoner unrest. We feel that closer contact with their families will achieve this.
And how does this differ from the present system?
Well, at the moment, the women are allowed one visit per week under close supervision. I must point out, however, that all visits are at my discretion, and quite frequently a prisoner receives more than one.
And sometimes they receive none?
If the circumstances warrant.
Meaning?
I think we're wandering a little, don't you?
Right, go on.
The new measures we have introduced allow the women to spend a longer time with their families unsupervised. We have converted a shed away from the main building for the women to receive their visitors. Husbands can bring the children and spend a couple of hours alone with their wives without an officer breathing down their necks all the time.
Give it back to that kid.
And they're free to do whatever they like in this period?
Completely, that is the idea.
So I presume this facility is only open to married women with families?
Initially, yes, though we do recognize a genuine de facto relationship. If the scheme is a success and not abused by the prisoners, then we may consider introducing unsupervised visits for everyone. As you will appreciate, privacy in a place such as this is a rare commodity, whereas it is taken for granted in the outside world. By granting the women that basic right, we hope to instill a sense of responsibility towards themselves and their families.
You mean if they don't behave themselves, they lose the privilege?
No, Mr. Taylor, that is not what I mean.
I'm sorry if I seem cynical, but a lot of people will see it like that. Your inmates included, no doubt. Personally, I'm very impressed with your efforts, Mrs. Davidson. It's about time someone did something to drag the penal system out of the Dark Ages.
Thank you.
Would there be any chance of seeing the visiting compound?
Yes, of course. I'll take you there myself.
Thank you.